You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAC Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. This is your host, Koku. Glad to have you guys tuning in once again. The show is gaining traction. Before we get into today's topic, just want to remind everyone that we have a GoFundMe up. We're trying to raise $2,000 to be able to purchase better podcasting equipment as well as marketing our podcasts out there. We're trying to reach a wider audience within the Black community. And so far, we're very pleased with who we have supporting us. But of course, we want to get the word out to as many people as possible. So if you can, please head over to our Facebook page or our Twitter page or even our Instagram page. And you'll find a link there pinned at the top where you can support the cause. Shout out to Karen Mighty for donating yesterday $15. Really appreciated. I hope more people will do the same. Just want to shout out the Bitter Medicine Think Tank on WhatsApp. We have a WhatsApp group where we have a think tank where we have some pretty interesting discussions. We could do with more people who have concrete thoughts as it pertains to the Black community. Please go again to our social media pages. You'll find the link. Join us in the WhatsApp group. We don't want any trolls. We don't want any of you white supremacist asshole types. We just want Black people who, to put it the way Oni from the Black perspective says it, we want Black solutions for Black problems, and we want those to be presented by Black people. Moving on to today's show. Today's show, I want to discuss the Snake Oil Salesman. The Snake Oil Salesman is an antiquated word. It's from a time long ago, before there was social media and all this type of technology. But you will also be familiar with the term because it's heavily associated with the term con man as well as hustler. And the Black community has been infiltrated for some time now by the con man, the hustler, the Snake Oil Salesman, and sadly, the Black conscious community has now been infiltrated by these types of people. So what's the Snake Oil Salesman? As I said, the Snake Oil Salesman, also known as a con man, also known as a hustler, because they're all interrelated. They're the kind of individual who used to sell products which would never work as advertised. I actually have a story about that from my youth via my grandmother. I'll share with you in a second. But they sell products which do not work as advertised. And products don't have to be, some kind of elixir, or it could be in what they talk about. It could be documentary films. It could be, it could be any of those kinds of things, right? Products are not always something that you buy off the shelf. It's not always something that you can hold. It could just be an ideology that someone's trying to push. Usually the victims of these types of people are poor. Poor people who are suffering from some type of malady, looking for some kind of ease from whatever's ailing them. And they fall for the tricks of these snake oil salesmen. One of the character things about a snake oil salesman is they often tend to be a lovable rogue. someone that you find attractive, someone that seems sympathetic. They're oftentimes well-spoken, they're humorous, they're funny, they have seen the world. They've done these things that many of us have not done, or at least they're able to convince you that they've done these things or that they are these things. Now, the thing about the snake oil salesman is that if you think about what I'm saying, they're in the business of selling you something that doesn't necessarily work as advertised. That means that they're businessmen. They're entrepreneurs, but they're shady. If you think about what I'm saying thus far, you will realize a lot of the top figures in black conscious communities fit this description. Now, we all know about the conscious beef and stuff that went down. And as a matter of fact, I did a show about it, the first show of the year. And I had my guest on from the Pro-Black Perspective podcast, Onitase. And we really went in on that topic in general about the deficit of leadership in the black community and stuff like that. And because of the deficit, you have those people who have that charm, who have the ego, who have the balls to portray themselves in a certain way. But when you really peel away the bullshit layers, you will see a lot of these folks are in the hustle for money. So the thing about business, like I said, the snake oil salesman, the con man, the hustler, they're a businessman, right? They're some of the worst types of businessmen, too, because they will try to get that dollar by any and every means necessary. And I'm going to talk to you about a very popular one-time hustler who denied the hustler in the black community later on in life. So anytime you hear people bigging up the hustlers in black society, historically and stuff, they're lying. The hustler is not one to look up to, is not one to aspire to be, is not one to associate yourselves with. So like I said, hustlers, snake oil salesmen, con men, they're businessmen, shady businessmen. And the fundamental thing about business is that you have to identify your target market. That's the first thing you do when you write a business plan. Who is your target market? Every day, there are black folks coming into consciousness. That means that the conscious community is a growing community. And that's the kind of market as a businessman you want to get into, one that is growing. So a lot of these hustlers out here, these conscious hustlers, they recognize that there is a market. Don't let them fool you and tell you that there's no money in black empowerment and that the money is in cooning. I've heard of several of these guys say this, and this is a lie. There's money in cooning, yes, that's true. But there's money in empowerment as well, if you know how to work the people. And unfortunately, black people, black society, is an ailing society. We suffer due to white inferiority complex, or white supremacy, as some people will call it. We suffer in that system. And so we're always looking for that thing or those things that will make us feel better. Before I continue talking about how it's a business and the things that you do when you're operating a business, let me tell you a quick story in my childhood. So I'm from the islands. I'm from the Caribbean. And my grandmother, I grew up with my grandmother, I should say my grandparents, and we kept pigeons. Not an uncommon thing. People in the States actually do it as well. We kept pigeons around. And of course, where there are pigeons or birds, there's bird shit. And several decades before I was around, before I came to be as a kid, my grandmother had these pigeons in the yard. And some Indian fella was walking through the streets and saw that she had these pigeons. She had a pigeon coop, and of course, all this bird shit was around. And he came to her and he said, "Hey, lady, can I get some of that pigeon shit that you have? I'll pay you for it." My grandmother, thinking nothing of it, is bird shit, right? She said, "Man, go ahead and take what you want. You don't have to pay me for bird shit. Go take it." So the Indian guy took the bird shit, added must be alcohol or water or an oil or something like that. He added to it into a glass tincture bottle. If you know what a tincture bottle is, it's heavily associated with old-time medicine and stuff like that. They still have tincture bottles now, but you don't hear about it as much. He added some water, just regular like household items. He added to it, shook it up, changed some color. It looked legit. He did that to several bottles, as she told me. He tried to pay her again. She declined. And he went and sold that to people who were suffering. And back in those days, if you go back, say maybe 100 years, just shy of 100 years ago, a lot of people in the Caribbean, even here in the U.S., a lot of people were suffering from tuberculosis or TB. And so he went and he sold this thing to people who were suffering from TB or those who were afraid of contracting TB or what have you. He sold that and he made a profit. No one ever, to my knowledge, and to hers, no one questioned what he was doing. No one questioned it. All they cared about was feeling better, so they bought bird shit resuspended in oil and water or alcohol and water. And we have the same thing going on right now with black folks. When black folks become awakened, it's like what James Baldwin said. It's hard not to be angry every day. When you're awakened and you realize what's going on, when you realize how white supremacy is dominating you in every facet of life, you want something to make you feel better. So a lot of people, they go to another kind of snake oil salesman, con man, hustler, which is the priest or the preachers in the church. And I'm going to call names, the Creflo Dollars. What's the white boy out there in Dallas? Joel Osteen. Those people of that kind of low ilk, that's who a lot of black folks run to. And a lot of black folks will put their little bit of money, poor black folks will put their little bit of money to make these guys rich and flashy and could dance on money at the pulpit and all this kind of stuff. Black folks do that because it makes them feel better. Do y'all understand what y'all are doing? Y'all are propping someone else up, making them rich, making them be able to provide better for their children and their family at large. Just so you could feel a little bit better about your conditions. Don't you think these guys eventually start to recognize, oh man, my target market is profitable and I need to exploit them even further? So getting back to the idea that the con man, the hustler, the snake oil salesman is an entrepreneur of sorts, some of the worst kinds of entrepreneurs, you have to understand the business of it. A lot of black folks don't understand business because we are afraid to start a business of our own. We think it's too much work. It's easier to go and work for somebody else. But when you start to get into a business class, like I did, I have a degree in business. When you get into that, you start to realize there's a step, there's a sequence to it. And you can apply those sequences to anything. Anything can become a business. Okay? So the first thing you have to do is identify your target market. You have a target market that's expanding, that's ever growing. Beautiful. Beautiful. But what's the next fundamental thing you need to do? You need to fill a gap that's not being filled. You need to find a way to market yourself, your product, your services to those people in a way that's different from everyone else who's also catering to that market. And if you can't do that, and even if you could do it, the thing you have to do is kill the competition. That's fundamental in business. You kill the competition. So you're a snake oil salesman, a shyster, a con man, a hustler. How do you kill the competition? Or why do you kill the competition? You see, not many can successfully compete for the same dollars. So you have to figure out how to compete without competing, so to speak. You have to create situations where you are eliminating competition. That means you could shamelessly do everything you can to eliminate and destroy the competition. How do you eliminate competition? Simply do what others will not do. When you analyze what was recently going on in the conscious community with the conscious beef between Umar Johnson, Tariq Nasheed, Boyce Watkins, you would realize that when the beef hits, the first thing a guy like Tariq Nasheed does is do a bunch of video rants, call the man every gay kind of terminology you can call him. The N-word is used explicitly. You get from Umar all these memes and the name calling and, talk about a herpes on a lip and all that's to destroy and kill the competition. Because let's not make a mistake here. Umar, and I like Umar Johnson. I have issues with Umar Johnson, as we all should have issues with anyone who's vocal on behalf of the black community. We got to make sure these people are on point. I feel Umar hasn't been as transparent as I would have been had I been in his position. So it calls into question his motives, etc. I get that. But Umar, not only does he speak well, but he speaks well about topics that affect us every day. It's not just the delivery, but it's his content that's so timely. And when you look at what's going on in black society, his content, as well as his delivery, speaks to the people. People will pay to hear more of that, especially now that and sometime later I'm going to talk about the layers of division that occurs in the black community and how these layers of division affect real unity in the black community. But one of the layers of division that we have in the black community is the religious versus the cynic. And in black society, you're starting to see more cynics every day. Okay? And so when you have someone who can deliver like the religious can, but is not speaking about issues from any religious standpoint, that's another part of the market you're cornering right there. So if you want to sell your DVDs and this, that, and the other, and you want to be, the man, the go-to, the one who people spend all their coins with, you're going to attack someone like Umar Johnson. Because a guy like Umar Johnson stands in your way. And this show is not about exonerating Umar Johnson, because actually I'm putting Umar in the same group with the Snake Oil Salesman, the con men, and the hustlers. Okay? What this show is about is trying to get my people to understand that you gotta stop falling for the hustle. You gotta start looking at, well, what is this person really doing for our society? You're speaking, we're giving you money, but are you doing anything more than Creflo Dollar does? Anything more than Joel Osteen does? Are you doing anything more, really? And I'm here to tell you today, and I spoke about this a little bit in my last broadcast, but, Hidden Colors was cool and everything, but a lot of that information is really out there for free, if we're being honest. Also, if we're being honest, I came to know about Hidden Colors really through seeing snippets of Umar Johnson. Okay? That's really the truth. When I look at a guy like, I was going to say Moist Watkins, but when I look at a guy like Boyce Watkins, to me, and I've said this before, was deeper when he first hit the scene doing the YouTube videos than he is now that he's kind of taking sides with Tariq Nasheed and people like that. Boyce Watkins, to me, is kind of a beta male type dude who, he kind of plays the game and tries to kind of associate with people. That's just my opinion. You don't have to agree. But I spent my life really observing people and putting together kind of character charts on people. And that's what I see of Boyce Watkins and Tariq Nasheed and the like. And on one of Tariq's recent shows, someone in the chat room said to him, he said, "Hey, Tariq, you're no better than Umar Johnson." Because, and Umar Johnson said this as well recently, because you collect funds on a GoFundMe for every film you put out. We could see if it was just the first film. Okay, cool. But you've made money off that first film. At this point, you should be able to put up that money for those films. But instead, what you're doing is you have the people putting up a major share of the film money. And then you're going to sell the product. And then you're going to sit up on your show, on your platform, and people are going to see you taking these nice trips to Hawaii and St. Lucia and all this kind of place. All these kinds of places that people can't afford to go to themselves. That's on the back of the people. And when we're confronted with that on the show, Tariq did a little throwaway line like, well, that's my business. And I received the proceeds from my business. No, Negro, you got that stuff done because of the people who are supporting you, the people who you are taking advantage of. And I would like to see black folks stop being taken advantage of. See, every black smile doesn't mean it's for you. Some black smiles are against you. When I talked about, if you go back in the archives, you'll know that I did a podcast on 1804 and on Haitians having identified their true enemies. And I've mentioned it several times since on different podcasts. But one of the things the Haitians recognize with some fellow Haitians, some Negroes, some black people, they had to get put down to. And we got to start putting these guys out of business. We have to stop supporting them with our dollars and start supporting people who are really out here putting in work and making things happen. I saw a story recently, and I should have written down the name, but there's a guy who's done schools already. Didn't ask for no big set of money like Umar did, and he's put together smaller schools, I'm sure, with an African-centered value system. No one knows his name, but he's doing it. Umar could have already done this school thing. At least you could have shown where you bid on a school. We have people making videos out here showing that you haven't even bid on a school. So, for the people who are listening You got to tell yourselves and tell those around you, we got to stop falling victim to the hustle.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAC Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the pro-black perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
So anyone who's telling you to respect hustlers and how important the hustler was to any movement that black society had, like, for instance, the civil rights movement, that person is not being very truthful in what they're saying. They're trying to have you sympathize for the hustler that they are, okay? I'll give you an example. Let me read something for you guys. There was a man named Malcolm Little. Have you ever heard of Malcolm Little before? Maybe you know him by his reformed name, which is Malcolm X. Malcolm X used to be a hustler before he became Malcolm X. Back when he was Malcolm Little, before he had a reasonably long stint in prison, before he came to consciousness via his change in spirituality, influenced by the Nation of Islam. Malcolm X once said, and I quote, "And because I have been a hustler, I knew better than all whites knew, and better than nearly all of the black leaders knew, that actually the most dangerous black man in America was the ghetto hustler. Why do I say this? The hustler out there in the ghetto jungles has less respect for the white power structure than any other Negro in North America. The ghetto hustler is internally restrained by nothing. He has no religion, no concept of morality, no civic responsibility, no fear, nothing. To survive, he is out there constantly preying upon others, probing for any human weakness like a ferret. The ghetto hustler is forever frustrated, restless, and anxious for some action. Whatever he undertakes, he commits himself to it fully, absolutely. What makes the ghetto hustler yet more dangerous is his glamour image to the school dropout youth in the ghetto. These ghetto teenagers see the hell caught by their parents struggling to get somewhere, or see that they have given up struggling in the prejudiced, intolerant white man's world. The ghetto teenagers make up their own minds they would rather be like the hustlers whom they see dressed sharp and flashing money and displaying no respect for anybody or anything. So the ghetto youth become attracted to the hustler worlds of dope, thievery, prostitution, and general crime and immorality. I want you to take that in. I want you to replay that section if you need to. Because we're going to move what Brother Malcolm said there from the ghetto jungles, as he put it. We're going to move it just slightly over into the conscious community within the ghetto jungles. And I want you to think about what he says. Think about what he says, how he describes the hustler. Think about how he talks about what the hustler capitalizes off of. Human weaknesses. Think about the temperament that he describes the ghetto hustler as having. Forever frustrated, restless, and anxious for some action. Don't you guys see this in what's going on with a lot of the more known names in the black community, in the black conscious community? Don't you guys see the restlessness? Where these guys are always warring with someone? I mean, let's take 2017 alone. And look at how many beefs there were in the so-called conscious community. And all that ends up doing is taking away from the positivity there is in community. And while we're at it, I'd like to ask many of you who like to use Hotep as an insult. Oh, Hotep beeps. Oh, the Hotep was this, the Hotep was that. Stop it. Because Hotep is one of the most positive things you can talk about. Hotep is an Egyptian word that roughly translates to be at peace. So when you guys are looking at these conscious beefs, that's not Hotep. So please stop using that terminology. Okay? But Malcolm X's words on the hustler is deep, because as he starts out, he says, because I had been a hustler, I knew better than all whites knew, and better than nearly all of the black leadership knew. The most dangerous black man is a hustler. Okay? And now you bring in consciousness. You bring in the fact that he or she is hustling off of your pain, off of your suffering. You better wake up. You better wake up. All of these guys out here, the more known guys and the guys who are trying to get themselves known, they're hustlers. When I had the podcast called Making a Coon, the guy who was the subject of that podcast, I can't remember his name right now, but he's like a guy like Tommy Sotomayor. These guys are coons. But they're hustling that cooning. I don't think they believe that stuff for real. But they know that there's a market for it. They know that there's a lot of self-hating black folks out there. There's a lot of hating of black folks by white people out there. So they have their audience, and that audience is growing every day. This is business, people. In business, you corner the market and you try to destroy the competition. And because of the nature of human beings, we tend to like to see the drama. This is what all the love and hip hop and all these shows are built off of. We like to tune in and watch drama. We like to see the guy who could clown a guy on video for 45 minutes, calling him all kind of walrus and the Prince of Pot Pie and all. We love that stuff. There's no better fun for us than to watch that kind of shit. But we got to be bigger than that now. We got to be deeper than that. In black society, like I said, the Snake Oil Salesman has been around for ages now, probably even a millennia. The newer versions, the con man, the hustler, are more recent entries into the historical account. In black society, the hustler came about because during Jim Crow, blacks were being shut out of the legit ways to build material wealth. So they entered into the underground black market. That's your gambling, that's your drug dealing, that's your robbing, your stealing, your pimping, your prostituting. That's where blacks went to try to make material wealth. Later on, they entered into sports and entertainment and stuff like that. But that's where the hustle came from. So to have nice things like nice clothing or fancy cars, you became a hustler. And you took on the hustler mentality of fuck you, pay me. That fuck you, pay me mentality is hella dangerous when it comes to black folks and any kind of semblance of a conscious black community. Because that fuck you, pay me mentality basically has the hustler saying, well, fuck society, fuck community, fuck law and order, fuck what white people think, fuck what black people think, etc. And they will do whatever to whomever to get a piece of change. So in the 70s now, when black folks started to be able to produce their own films and stuff, they glorified the hustlers once more. The hustler thrived. You saw it in those movies like The Mac, Sweetback, all those kind of black exploitation films of the 70s. They glorified the hustler. So in the 80s and the 90s, the rapper, hip-hop and the hustler turned rapper became the big thing. This is Jay-Z's whole shtick. Jay-Z's whole shtick is built off of he was a so-called hustler. And what are you really doing when you're a hustler? But selling your shit and doing your dirt to people in your own community? These guys aren't going across town and destroying white communities. They're doing that in their own communities. That's despicable. A few years ago on Facebook, I saw people talking about, well, I can't down the hustler because that man is making money. Making money off of who? Off of your mothers? Your fathers? Making money off of who? We as a society, we got to get away from this glorifying the hustler mentality. We got to stop it. It's killing us. We're losing ground behind these people who are self-proclaimed hustlers. We're losing ground to the Snake Oil Salesman. Yeah, you might feel good after you listen to a video clip or you go and see someone's lecture, or you buy someone's documentary, or you buy someone's, business course, or what have you. But at the end of the day, does that change anything for the larger society? No. No, it doesn't. I want you guys to go back and listen to my last podcast to learn what it is that we all should be doing to become better leaders in our community, to become better at vetting others who would be leaders in our community. One time ago, we did used to vet people a little bit. You had to have come through some kind of rank, some kind of organization. You had to move up the ranks and to be held as a leader. Nowadays, any dude who says, he's doing a lecture, we're good with that. Even though Dr. John Henrik Clarke wasn't actually a doctor, he was a scholar. He was an adjunct lecturer at Hunter College. Those are the kind of people we could follow and support. Because support is necessary when it comes to our leadership. We've also made this mistake in the past. Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture, died sick and poor. And that guy put in real work. From high school, he was putting in work. If I'm not mistaken, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, those guys died and their families were in a disarray financially. So we do need to support our leaders. But if you notice something about those guys I talked about, they didn't try to capitalize off of the people. Now, I'm sure they got paid for some speaking engagements here and there. I'm sure they did. And they should have. They should have been able to live from the movement somewhat. But notice that they didn't hustle the movement. I see no historical document showing that these guys tried to hustle the movement. You have less talented people, less qualified people who are now hustling the movement, and every one of us is supporting it. Just even talking about the beefs, to be honest, is supporting it on some levels. But I'm here today, I'm trying to get you guys to stop supporting snake oil salesmen, con men, and hustlers. These people are a detriment to society because they're bloodsuckers, they're vampires. They're feeding off of you while not changing anything that has to do with you. And for those of you who are taking on that hustle persona is not even a good persona. Because hustle is built off of fear. A person can hustle you because they're playing off of your fears. They're hustling you because they're playing off of their ego. But you're being hustled off of your fear. If you look at Umar Johnson, you look at Tariq Nasheed, you look at all these guys, high ego, heavy ego. What are they playing off of? Your fear. Your fear of the system of white supremacy, which we all should be somewhat afraid of. But if we come together, we wouldn't have that fear anymore. I could tell you that. If we promote people and systems and ideologies that bring us together to fight in what is essentially a war, you could call it whatever you want to call it. White supremacy, this, that, it's war. If you could get some generals or become a general yourself under one unifying ideology, which is race first, which is black first, that makes more sense than anything else. But when you sit up and you laugh and giggle like little school children about people essentially name calling back and forth and snapping on one another, you look foolish. We all look foolish. Instead of hustle, we want to flow. Flow is built off of love. And I don't mean that cheesy cornball, the rapper Common bullshit where if we extend our hands in love, white people... No. I'm not talking about that dumb shit. I'm talking about real love for progress, love for your blackness, love for getting this fucking oppressor up off of you. You'll be better off. Don't let no one scare you into supporting them and making them rich. Don't let anyone do that to you. I'm not going to belabor the point any further. I thank you for listening today. As I said before, we're going to be putting out podcasts twice a week, every Wednesday, every Sunday. Please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get the notification, or update your podcast catcher, whatever one you use, Castbox, Podbean, Pod Addict, etc. iTunes, we're on iTunes as well. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you also tune in to our sister show on the KWAZ Radio Podcast Network, which is the Pro-Black Perspective with Oni Tase. Make sure to tune into his show. He's going to start opening up his show once a month to have debates and discussions live on the air. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, tune in. This show has been doing wonderful so far. Please remember that we have a GoFundMe. We're just asking for a total of $2,000 just so we can streamline and update our podcasting equipment, as well as marketing the podcast to be able to get more listeners and perhaps get more sponsorship. Later on down the road, we want to actually get into putting out free documentaries. Let me repeat that. We want to get into putting out free documentaries that actually offer solutions to a lot of the problems that we have going on. I'm right now working on trying to gather folks who can speak on the Montu or the Menchu arts that came from Africa. That's where the Romans took it from Africa, called it the martial arts, and then Asia took it on, and that's where you have all these offshoots of Kung Fu and stuff like that. I want to get back to the source, which comes from us. And I want to put something out there that deals with the Mentu arts, but also it talks about really about militarism in black society. And I wanted to be able to put it out for free on our website, etc. So this first GoFundMe is about getting the podcast more efficient, more visible. Later on, I might do a GoFundMe that raises some funds, not a lot, but some funds just so that we could get the equipment to actually film a documentary. So these are the things that I want to do more with my show is actually provide actual solutions, not just tack together information that's widely available on the internet or in the library and present it to you in a nice little package, and you drop X amount of money for it, and I go and I live the high life in gated communities. No, that's not what I'm about. I literally want to put out information that the people can use as source material to counteract the fact that white supremacy is affecting them in all aspects of their lives. If you know ones who I should talk to when it comes to the Menchu arts or when it comes to economics, people who are not known but who are interested in really uplifting the people and have no problem using their expertise to give us knowledge, please send them to us. Have them email us at bitter.medicine.podcast@gmail.com. It'll be greatly appreciated. We have to get rid of the people who look to capitalize off of us by counteracting what they're doing, what they're trying to have you pay for. We want to counteract that with free information that you can actually use. Okay? So, until next time, thank you for listening. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.